Hello and welcome to From the Roots Up, where we're building our homestead little by little from the roots up. I'm Kristy and today we are canning potatoes. It is day 19 in our Every Bit Counts challenge, and we've been canning and preserving and freezing and drying and all the things all month long, and today our project is going to be pressure canning these potatoes. Now, canning potatoes takes a little more work because you do have to hot pack them. We're going to boil the potatoes, but first we're going to skin them and cut them into slices and put them in this pot. In this pot, I already have some water. As you cut, you want to keep the potatoes covered in water so that they don't brown. So let's go ahead and peel these potatoes and get them chopped up and ready to go. I'm going to save my peels and bring them out to the chickens so we don't waste any of our food. That's all the peeling and chopping we've got. That is the hardest part of this whole process. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this pot and I'm going to set it on the stove on high and then get it boiling, and then I'm going to boil it for 2 minutes. We don't want to cook the potatoes all the way through because we don't want them crumbly when we can them. But we do want to boil them enough that a little bit of the starch starts to break down. So 2 minutes for this size of potato is plenty. And then we'll pull them off and I'll see you back here when we're ready. All right, so our potatoes have boiled, we drained them, and now they're over here ready to go in the jars. I am going to pack them with boiling water, so I have a kettle on the stove. The other thing that I have is I went ahead and put some water in the pressure canner, and I'm heating that on the stove. I want to do this because I'm hot packing these jars, and I don't want hot jars to go into a cold canner. That could cause the jars to crack. So you want the water in your canner to be about the same temperature as your jars. Before I put my potatoes in the jars though, I'm going to save some potatoes out in this bowl because tomorrow I am going to be making beef stew to can. And I've already done the work of boiling these potatoes and chopping them up and peeling them, and so it's just really a lot easier just to batch cook like this. Now, since it's going to be tomorrow till I get to them, not only am I putting them in water, but I put a little lemon juice, and that will keep them from browning in the meantime. Now, the rest of this process is pretty easy. I warmed these jars up so I'm not putting hot material into a cold jar. And first, I'm just going to put the potatoes in. I want to leave an inch of headspace, which is the space between the top of the jar and the top of whatever I'm canning. So I'm going to make sure there's an inch. All right, before the boiling water, I want to put some salt in here. This is canning salt. It does not have to be canning salt. The only difference between canning salt and regular salt is that it's non-iodized and it's finer. So any non-iodized salt, pure salt will do. For these quart jars, I'm going to put 1 teaspoon of salt in. And if you're using a pint, just cut that in half. The only thing left that goes in the jars is the boiling water. And remember, I want that inch of headspace. All right, the next step is to make sure there's no air bubbles. I'm going to gently stick a knife down in here. And after we do this, we may have to add more liquid. Next, before I put the lids on, I want to make sure that the lid area is nice and clean and there's no debris on it. Just wiping it off with a damp paper towel is totally fine. We don't want anything in there that might prevent the lid from sealing. And then you want a new lid. The rings can be reused. You're gonna put it on top of the potatoes and you're gonna twist. Now, your fingers, you're gonna twist until it's just barely tight on your fingers, and then you're gonna twist a little bit more. You don't wanna wrench it down too hard or your jar might not seal all the way. All right, now you can see my canner is hot. So it's gonna be perfect for these hot jars. And I'm just gonna set them down in there. You wanna make sure there's not enough water that covers them over the top, but you want several inches of water. Now the next thing I'm gonna do with this canner is I'm going to apply some olive oil around the edge. You do this every time you use the canner. This adds lubrication for the lid and it also helps it seal. Then an important step with this All-American canner is I wanna look through the hole that you're gonna put the weight on eventually and make sure I can see all the way through it to the light. And that means it's clear, which is a good thing. Now with this canner, there's a little mark here in the bottom of the canner, and on the top of the lid, there's an arrow. And you wanna match those two up, and then twist to where the hooks go underneath the little knobs. Then I'm gonna take opposite ends, and I'm going to tighten opposite ends. This keeps the canner from getting uneven and tilting up. We want the lid to be nice and even on it. This recipe will be processed for 40 minutes, and at my altitude, the pressure should be 10. You want to check the Ball website for your specific area and your canning pressure. When using the pressure canner, I'm going to put the canner on the stove and turn it to high. Then I'm going to wait for it to release steam out of this valve. Once it starts releasing steam out of the valve, I'll set the timer for 10 minutes and let it release steam for 10 whole minutes. After that, I will put the weight on it. There are different poundages on this weight, and you just pick the circle that says the correct poundage, 10 pounds here. So once this is let off steam for 10 minutes, I'm going to put the 10-pound side down. And then when this starts to jiggle, that's when I'll start the timer for the processing time. And for this recipe, it's 40 minutes. Once it's done, it's 40 minutes, I will turn off the stove and let the pressure on the meter come down to 0. And then I can take my canning jars out. All right, let's take it over to the stove and get it started. All right, if you can see, we are spewing steam right now. So we're gonna set the timer to 10 minutes. And once 10 minutes is passed, we'll put on our weight. The timer went off. We've been going for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to put the weight on this 10 side down for us. And it should start rattling in just a few minutes. And when that happens, we'll set the timer for 40 minutes. Okay, as you can see, the weight is rattling and shaking, and we're up to 10 pounds of pressure right here. So I'm gonna set the timer for 40 minutes, and then we'll turn the burner off and wait for the pressure to go down to 0, and then I'll meet you back over to take them out. All right, our canner has depressurized and we have pulled the potatoes out. Look how beautiful these look. And now we have 6 more jars to add to our total of our Every Bit Counts challenge. Thank you so much for joining us. If you got some value out of this, please be sure to like and subscribe.